I never expected my first trip to Alaska to leave me uneasy around cruise ships. I booked a 7-night sailing on the Silver Horizon because I wanted slow mornings, glacier views, and unlimited coffee without anyone asking me to hurry. We pulled away from Vancouver on Sunday, late July of 2017, and by the time the skyline turned into a smear of gray behind us, the ship already felt like its own floating city. There were well over 3,000 people on board, yet I was traveling alone, 37 between jobs, and craving that clean, cold ocean air that makes your lungs feel brand new. On embarkation day, a small band played on the open deck while families waved from the rail. People looked genuinely happy. Kids darted around the pool like they were being chased by pure excitement. Couples posed with neon drinks in souvenir cups. Strangers talked like they'd known each other for years. My cabin was on deck 8, starboard side, near midship. Across the hall, in cabin 8235, lived a tall man with close-cropped dark hair, his wife, and 3 teenage daughters. The wife, Megan, I later learned, smiled every time we crossed paths. That first evening, she joked that her daughters had already gone through enough ice cream to bankrupt the ship. Her laugh sounded real, the kind that makes you smile, even if you don't know what's funny. Monday, we slid through the green hush of the inside passage. Rain streaked the windows, but I spent hours curled in a lounge chair with a blanket, watching steep pine slopes drift past in mist. I saw the family again that night in the main dining room. They sat one table over. The girls bickered softly about dessert, teasing their dad when he ordered another steak. Megan touched his arm and laughed when he acted offended, like it was all a show for them. Everything looked normal, like another vacation photo waiting to be taken. Tuesday morning, we reached Juneau. I joined a group tour out to the Mendenhall Glacier. The blue ice rose behind us like a frozen wave, and everyone took pictures until the guide rushed us back onto the bus. The ship left port right on schedule that afternoon. Next was Skagway, with a scenic run through Glacier Bay in between. Water so clear it looked like bottled glass. At dinner, I ate alone. Later, I watched a nostalgic music show in the theater, then bought chamomile tea and headed for my cabin. The sea was calm, just a gentle roll that made the hallway feel like it was drifting. I set my phone to airplane mode, cracked the balcony door for fresh air, and fell asleep to the soft, muffled thrum of engines. I don't know how long I slept before I woke up. A single, heavy thud snapped me awake. At first, I thought it was a wave hitting the hull, but then I heard voices, sharp, raised, echoing in the corridor. 1 male, 1 female. I checked the time. 9:48. The shouting stopped as suddenly as it started. Then came quick footsteps and the hard, metallic rattle of a door slamming. I lay still, listening, telling myself it was just late-night drama. Someone too drunk. Someone arguing about something stupid. At 9:55, another sound hit, violent and close, like furniture being shoved into a wall. Then a scream. Not playful, not startled. A raw, ripping sound that made every hair on my arms lift. I threw on jeans and yanked my door open. The corridor was empty, but the screaming continued, now mixed with panicked crying. It was coming from 8235. Other passengers peeked out of their cabins. A man in pajama pants hurried toward the noise. Someone pressed the emergency button on the wall. Then the door across from me flew open from the inside. One of the teenage girls stumbled into the hallway. Her white shirt was stained a bright, wet red. She was sobbing so hard, she couldn't form words, just pointing back into the room, like her arm was the only part of her that still worked. The next seconds didn't feel real. Everything slowed down, like my brain couldn't keep up. The tall man, the father, appeared in the doorway. There was blood on his hands, blood across his face. His eyes were wide but strangely far away, like he was looking through us instead of at us. His mouth moved, and I heard one sentence with terrifying clarity. "She wouldn't stop laughing at me." He stepped forward. The girl backed away, screaming for help. A passenger moved in front of him with his arms spread. Another shouted for security. 2 crew members in uniform arrived almost immediately, followed by a third, clutching a radio. They ordered everyone back. 1 crewman guided the girls down the hall. The others went into the cabin. For a split second, I saw inside. An overturned lamp, broken glass. Sheets soaked so dark they looked black. And on the carpet, near the edge of the bed, something unmoving. Just a foot, pale against the mess, before the door slammed shut. The public address system crackled. "Medical team to deck 8, midship. Medical emergency in cabin 8235. Repeat." Passengers stepped aside as 2 nurses ran past, pushing a cart with oxygen and trauma bags. The father didn't fight when security pulled his wrists behind his back and cinched plastic restraints tight. His eyes stayed glassy, almost calm, like the world had already ended for him, and he was just watching the rest of us catch up. A crew member told me to go back to my room. My hands shook so badly, I dropped my keycard twice before the lock finally read it. Inside, the silence felt heavy, like the room was holding its breath. Outside on the balcony, Alaska's summer twilight still hung over a black sea. True night never fully comes that time of year. Low clouds glowed faint orange and purple over distant peaks. I sat on the bed and listened to the wall. Muffled voices, the clatter of equipment, no more screaming. I didn't sleep again. By dawn, the ship had slowed in, Glacier Bay. Mountains rose on both sides, their tops dusted with snow even in midsummer. Light rain speckled the glass of my balcony door. The onboard naturalist began her usual cheerful narration about sea lions and carving ice. But every passenger I passed looked stunned, whispering in small clusters like they were afraid to speak too loudly. Rumors spread faster than the breakfast line. Money, infidelity, drugs, a stranger, a masked intruder. Only a few of us knew the truth. Around 8 in the morning, the captain made a formal announcement. His voice was steady, but something in it sounded tight. Due to a serious incident last night, we have notified the FBI and the U.S. Coast Guard. Authorities will board the vessel in Juneau for a full investigation. Out of respect for the family involved, we ask for your cooperation and privacy. Even the loudest spaces, the dining room, the theater foyer, the trivia lounge, fell quiet. All morning, yellow tape blocked off that section of Deck 8. Security stood guard. I went to breakfast, but I could barely swallow anything. Faces around me were pale, eyes tracking every doorway, as if danger might step out at any moment. The 3 girls were kept in a staff office with a counselor. Someone said they'd be flown home from Juneau. Nobody spoke the mother's name out loud, but you could feel her absence like cold wind every time the elevator doors opened near that taped corridor. At noon, rain hammered the decks while we docked back in Juneau. Federal agents boarded first, then local police. Passengers crowded the windows, watching evidence bags and camera equipment roll up the gangway. I avoided the rail and instead sat in a quiet lounge at the stern, staring through a wall of glass while water streaked down outside, warping the world into something distant and unreal. I kept seeing the father's hands, red, dripping, yet hanging loose at his sides like nothing had happened. Later, I learned that passengers in the next cabin, hearing the screams, had rushed in first. They found Megan on the floor. The girls were crying, trying to stop the bleeding with towels. One man dragged the husband away, while another called for help. Within minutes, crew restrained him, but the damage was already done. Megan died before the medical team reached her. Once we had cell service again, the news moved faster than the ship ever could. My phone lit up with headlines. A man arrested after killing his wife on an Alaska cruise. The same short clip played everywhere. The ship tied up at the dock, rain falling, unmarked vehicles parked beside stacks of luggage. His mugshot appeared before dinner. Blank stare. Bruising on his arms. Court documents said he told agents, "She wouldn't stop laughing at me," as if that sentence explained the whole world. The cruise line cancelled the evening show, but tried to keep everything else running. Some passengers still went to trivia. Some still ordered cocktails by the covered pool, as if pretending hard enough could rewind time. But wherever I walked, there was a hush, like the ship itself was trying not to make noise. I ordered tea in the piazza and listened to a piano player drift through gentle jazz, while two officers spoke quietly nearby. One sentence carried to my table, clear as ice. The kids heard everything. I paid and left my cup half full. That night we sailed toward Ketchikan, and the captain warned rough weather was coming. Whitecaps already slapped the windows. I shut my balcony door tight. In bed I kept the lamp on and scrolled the same articles until the words blurred. Outside, the ship creaked with every lean, the engines droning steady. In that sound, I felt both comfort and dread. A vessel can be enormous, bright, packed with cameras and staff and rules, and still, one cabin can become a place nobody can save in time. On Thursday morning, sunlight broke through as we reached Ketchikan. Float planes buzzed overhead. I joined a walking tour just to feel solid ground under my feet. The guide talked about totem poles and salmon ladders, but half the group kept checking phones, reading updates from the arraignment in Juneau. The judge denied bail. The husband would be flown to Anchorage, then held in federal custody. That should have eased my mind. It didn't. Back on board, the taped-off section of Deck 8 remained closed. A housekeeping cart sat outside 8235, fresh sheets folded and ready, like routine trying to pretend it hadn't been insulted. Crew members walked past without looking, eyes forward, trained to move grief out of sight. Friday, we cruised the open Pacific on our way to Victoria. Grey waves rolled to the horizon. Passengers filled the theater for a cooking demo, desperate for anything that felt normal. I sat in the back row listening to pots clang on stage, while my mind replayed the scream, the blood, the father's empty stare. The worst part was how ordinary it all was. No shadowy stranger, no paranormal warning, just a sudden break in a place designed for smiling photos. Saturday evening, as we docked in Victoria's inner harbour, the captain thanked us for our understanding during an unprecedented week. Bagpipes played on the pier for show, but the applause sounded thin. Many passengers skipped the final gala dinner. Those who went wore dark suits and dark dresses, like they were attending a funeral nobody wanted to name. I walked the waterfront alone, passing cafes glowing warm behind glass, but I couldn't shake the image of that cabin door opening into chaos. Near midnight, the ship's horns sounded, and we began the overnight run back south. I stood on an upper deck, wind numbing my cheeks, and watched Victoria fade into the distance. Below my feet, thousands of people slept inside a steel shell, trusting thin walls and strangers' goodwill. I felt the weight of that trust, like something fragile in my hands. Sunday morning, we cleared customs back at the terminal. Grey clouds hugged the hills. The passengers streamed off the gangway with souvenirs and half-empty sunscreen bottles. Reporters waited beyond the fence, cameras raised. I walked past them, pulling my suitcase, and tried not to look toward the lenses. That afternoon, back in my apartment, I unpacked slowly. My balcony faced east, and for the first time I noticed how quiet my city block was compared to a ship's constant hum. Still, I couldn't relax. Days later, more details surfaced. The wife suffered blunt force trauma. Investigators said the couple had argued, and alcohol may have been involved. Friends asked if I'd ever cruise again. I told them maybe, but I knew the truth was no. At least not for a long while. When I think of Alaska now, I don't picture whales or glaciers. I picture gray water under thin rain, broken by the reflection of bright ship lights. I remember how cabin doors look identical, whether someone inside is laughing or begging for help. Most travelers bring home photos. I brought home something else, a story I didn't want. A reminder that horror can walk beside you on a sunny deck, hidden in plain sight, until the moment it steps through an unlocked door. Even now, if I hear a sudden slam at night, neighbors dropping something upstairs, a car door in the street, my pulse jumps. I taste that metallic chill of the hallway on deck 8. I see red on a white shirt and hands raised like surrender. And I understand how fast any safe place can change forever. We sailed out of Miami on the first Sunday of March, 2002, just as the air was warming into spring, though the late afternoon wind still had a bite to it. My boss, Lauren Hastings, was celebrating her 14th year as a regional manager for a medical supply company, and the cruise on Royal Caribbean's towering ocean majesty was her reward. She brought her husband, Mark, and their 17-year-old son, Evan, because Lauren never truly stops being a manager, at work or at home. Me? I was her executive assistant. I had never been on a cruise. The sight of that floating city rising above the terminal felt unreal. Stacks of balcony cabins like terrace apartments, glass, steel. Everything too big, too polished, too confident. Sail away blurred into steel drum music, sweet rum punch, and announcements in multiple languages. At the muster drill, I stood on deck 5 beside lifeboat station 15 and tried to memorize every instruction while other passengers laughed and took selfies. Lauren grinned at me over her sunglasses. "Relax," she said. "Nothing bad ever happens on these things." Behind her, the dock fell away, and the ship's horn sounded deep enough to vibrate through my ribs. The first 2 days passed in a comfortable rhythm. Monday, we docked in Nassau. The Hastings family paid for a dolphin excursion, but I wandered Bay Street alone, buying small souvenirs and cold coconut water. Evan begged to rent a jet ski. His parents said no, too expensive, too sketchy. He sulked for a while, then disappeared into the arcade, and later re-emerged all charm and jokes, like a switch flipped. Tuesday was a sea day. The ship felt smaller now that I could navigate it. Corridors mapped in my head like a mall I'd worked in for years. I woke early, ran on the track, met Lauren for smoothies, fired off work emails on the ship's unreliable Wi-Fi, and still had time to read by the pool. Evan bounced between the basketball court and the teen club. He made friends fast. Other kids thrilled by a kind of freedom they didn't get on land. We saw him mostly at meals, hair always damp, face pink from sun, insisting he'd be back in the cabin before midnight. That promise held until Tuesday night. The ocean was so flat it looked ironed. We ate in the main dining room at the early seating. Evan barely touched his food. A girl from Colorado had invited him to karaoke, he said, up on one of the upper decks. Lauren rolled her eyes, but after dessert, she let him go. I went to an ice show, then wandered the promenade watching a themed street party play out under a ceiling painted like twilight. Near 11, I ducked into a bar that moved between decks like a slow elevator, drank one small glass of wine, and decided that was enough vacation for a work trip. By midnight, I was in my inside cabin on deck 10, headphones on, scrolling lazily until sleep took me. A hard knock snapped me awake. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, but it came again, quick, urgent. I checked my phone, 1:34 in the morning. I opened the door to find Lauren in loose shorts and bare feet, eyes wide and shiny with fear. "Is Evan with you?" she asked. My brain lagged behind her words. No. Why would he? She pushed past me and scanned the room like her son might be hiding behind the desk chair. "He never came back," she said. "Mark fell asleep with the TV on, and when I woke up just now, Evan's bed was empty." Every trace of alcohol left my system, like it was pulled out with a vacuum. Lauren paced, phone clenched in a white fist. "He has asthma," she kept saying, though we both knew he rarely used his inhaler anymore. We called his number. Straight to voicemail. I pulled on sneakers. Lauren slipped into sandals. The hallway was quiet, carpet dim under nightlights. Somewhere far below, the engines beat steady like a giant heart. At guest services, the night supervisor, a compact woman named Dina, listened with practiced calm, and then immediately turned serious. Because Evan was a minor, security had to be alerted. She spoke into a radio using codes I didn't understand. A discreet announcement went out on the crew channel, nothing that would wake passengers. Security met us near the elevators. The lead officer was broad-shouldered, name tag reading Victor. He asked for a recent photo. Lauren found one from that afternoon. Evan laughing in a hoodie, hair mashed by a borrowed helmet. Victor sent it to every guard on duty. Then he asked the question that made Lauren flinch. "Any reason your son might try to leave the ship?" Lauren shook her head so fast it looked painful. "He's terrified of deep water. He can barely swim." I tried to add something light, something to keep her from spiraling, but my voice came out thin. No one smiled. We searched. One team swept the lower decks. Dinah checked keycard logs to see if Evan had entered another cabin. Lauren and I followed a guard named Marisol toward the upper decks. We passed dark storefronts, rows of sleeping lounge chairs, silent arcade machines glowing faintly. On the pool deck, towel bins shivered in the wind. The ocean below sounded like static. The teen club was locked, lights off. A security record showed the last exit a little after midnight. We checked the sports bar. Empty, just a bartender wiping counters, while a basketball replay looped on screens. He swore he hadn't seen a kid in Evan's hoodie. Lauren's breathing got ragged. "He could be anywhere," she kept whispering. "Anywhere." I knew what she was picturing. A railing, a slip, black water swallowing a careless step. People fall. The ocean keeps secrets. Around 2:15, security checked in over the radio. No sightings. Victor told us they were moving to a deeper sweep. Public spaces, then staff-only corridors. Lauren and I stood near a covered bar, wind tugging at our clothes. The sky was moonless, a dark lid punctured by a few stubborn stars fighting against ship lights. Then Marisol's voice cut through the radio, sharp. "I have a possible. Deck 16 forward, starboard." Lauren bolted before anyone could stop her. I sprinted after her, past stacked lounge chairs, past the surf simulator, toward the open bow where couples posed for photos in daylight. Up here, the lights were sparse, leaving wide pockets of shadow. Cold spray blew against our faces. We found Evan by the forward rail. He stood very still, hands buried in his hoodie pockets, shoulders hunched up near his ears. Beside him, half turned away, was a tall man dressed entirely in black. Black jeans, black zip jacket, black baseball cap pulled low. The wind pressed the fabric tight against his frame, making him look too thin, almost wiry. Lauren called Evan's name, and he jerked as if waking from a trance. The man in black looked over his shoulder. I saw a pale slice of cheek, dark stubble along the jaw, and shadow where his eyes should have been beneath the brim. We rushed forward. The stranger didn't run. He simply angled his body, casually placing himself between us and the stairwell down to deck 15. Evan said something I couldn't hear. The man replied with a slight tilt of his head, as if he was offering advice. Then he walked away, hands loose, stride unhurried, and disappeared down the stairs before we could reach him. Security arrived seconds later. Lauren grabbed Evan and held him like she was afraid he might evaporate. Evan wouldn't meet her eyes. Marisol radioed a description. Male, tall, all black clothing, cap low, no visible name tag. Teams split to cover stairwells. Lauren and I guided Evan back inside through the solarium doors, out of the wind. He looked grey. His lips were pale. He wasn't crying, but he trembled so hard, the zipper on his hoodie clicked. We found a quiet corner near a towel stand. I asked what happened. For a long time, Evan stared at the floor. Finally, in a voice so low we had to lean in, he said the view is better at night. He swallowed hard. He said nobody comes up there. Lauren shut her eyes like she'd been hit. I asked Evan if the man touched him. Evan shook his head. No, he just talked. What did he ask you? Evan's hands curled into fists. Where I'm from, what grade, if I like movies, stuff that sounded normal until it didn't. Did he try to get you to go somewhere? A pause, then a small nod. He said there's a door down lower, Evan whispered. A place where you can sit right above the water, like flying. Lauren made a sound, half breath, half sob. Security reviewed cameras. They found footage of Evan and the man stepping onto deck 16 just before 1 in the morning. The man always kept his cap low. At one point, the cameras caught him slipping down the starboard stairwell. 2 decks below, he became a blur moving aft. Then he was simply gone. No key card matched. Him. No employee description fit. No cabin number tied to that face, because the face was never clear enough. Victor admitted quietly that, in rare cases, passengers managed to sneak someone on board in port with help from a bribed crew member, though it's difficult on a ship this size. The incident was logged as suspicious person, outcome undetermined. Evan refused to leave the cabin again. For the remaining day and a half, he lay on the lower bunk with earbuds in, watching movies with subtitles. Lauren ordered room service and kept the curtains closed. Mark tried to act calm, joking about teenage drama, but every laugh sounded brittle. I handled gratuities, customs forms, luggage tags, anything to keep my hands busy. When we docked back in Miami Friday morning, the sun was bright and ordinary. Passengers gathered with color-coded tags, excited for the next trip, the next story they'd tell. Lauren hugged me and thanked me for staying calm, promising me time off once we caught up on emails. Evan mumbled goodbye without lifting his eyes. We rolled our suitcases down the gangway past crew members smiling politely, unaware of the long night that had carved a new kind of caution into our faces. Outside, Families posed for photos by an anchor statue. Kids waved little paper flags. Seagulls screamed overhead. The ship loomed behind us with balconies stacked like honeycomb. And I couldn't stop thinking that somewhere inside, maybe in a stairwell a camera couldn't reach, a man in black had walked away untouched, ready for the next sailing and the next curious teenager who wanted to see the ocean at night. Most passengers would never know. They'd dance at Sail Away, eat at the buffet, sleep under the gentle rock of the sea, trusting bright lights and electronic keycards to keep danger far away. But I still hear the wind up on that forward deck and the deep hush of endless water below. It reminds me that on a ship, freedom and risk live side by side, separated by little more than a waist-high rail and a pocket of darkness where someone can wait unseen. I booked a 5-night sailing on the Celebrity Meridian out of Port Everglades on a warm Thursday afternoon in late September of 2008. I'd worked double shifts at the hospital all summer, and the idea of blue water and all-you-can-eat buffets felt like oxygen. The first afternoon on board was the usual blur. Lifeboat drill, frozen drinks, the white roar of the wake sliding away from Florida. By sunset, we were already past the Keys, lights flickering off starboard like distant candles. I turned in early, determined to squeeze every drop out of the next few days. But across the hallway, the casino crowd was just getting started. Friday unfolded bright and lazy. We were at sea, heading for Cozumel. Nothing but deep cobalt water in every direction. After breakfast, I walked deck 14, where the solarium sat under a glass roof. The ship carried more than 3,000 passengers, yet in the late morning lull, the space felt hushed. Hot tubs bubbled with people half asleep behind cheap sunglasses. That image stayed with me all day. Strangers in identical swimsuits, faces blank, floating in silence like mannequins on display. Late that night, long after most guests had drifted away, I couldn't sleep. I decided to look for coffee. The buffet always kept a pot going for insomniacs, and I figured the walk might burn off the dessert I regretted at dinner. The atrium was quiet, except for the hum of ventilation. Near the aft stairwell, I held a door for a crewman rolling a mop bucket toward the pool deck. He wore the white housekeeping uniform and a name tag that read, Mateo. He thanked me in soft, Spanish-accented English, and we traded small talk while disinfectant and salt hung in the air. The stars overhead looked too perfect, like someone had painted them. Out here, surrounded by nothing but water and night, conversation with a stranger felt oddly intimate. I asked how long he'd worked at sea. 7 contracts, he said. Nearly 7 years, with only brief breaks at home in Honduras. He never stopped moving the mop. Slow circles around deck chairs. Steady rhythm, like work was the only thing keeping him anchored. I mentioned the hot tubs, how they seemed busy no matter the hour. At that, Mateo paused. He leaned on the mop as if weighing whether he should speak. Then he asked, "Do you want to hear something that will ruin this deck for you?" The way he said it, calm, almost matter-of-fact, made my stomach tighten. But I was tired, curious, and maybe a little too confident, because I told him to go on. He glanced around, even though no one was close. 2 cruises ago, he said, a man died in the starboard hot tub. He didn't say it like a ghost story. He said it like a maintenance issue. Cardiac arrest, he explained. That's what the ship's doctor wrote later. But for hours, nobody noticed. The ship had been on a similar route earlier that year, and it happened the first night out. According to security footage, The passenger slipped into the bubbling water just before 10, leaned back against the molded headrest, and never moved again. The live band played on the opposite side of the pool deck, loud enough to mask anything unusual. Steam and chlorine rose around him like a curtain. His sunglasses stayed on. His head rested back. His arms drifted at his sides. He looked asleep. And that was the problem. Between 10 and midnight, other guests used the same hot tub. A couple climbed in and sat close, talking about drink specials. An older woman dipped her feet, complained the water was too warm, and walked away. Two college guys in baseball caps spent 20 minutes comparing excursions, practically shouting. No one acknowledged the silent man. No one looked at him long enough to understand what they were seeing. "People don't like to stare," Matteo said. "We glance and we look away." The ship's gentle motion kept the body wedged upright in the jets, posture almost natural. Nothing about him screamed danger, just a rude stranger dozing through the night. Everything changed when a supervisor began the closing sweep after midnight. He tapped the tub rim, told everyone it was time to clear the area. The couple climbed out. The silent man stayed put. The supervisor spoke louder, assuming the passenger was drunk. When he reached to touch the man's shoulder, Matteo said his hand sank in a way it shouldn't have, like touching something soft and wrong. The man folded sideways and slipped under the foam. The supervisor shouted. Crew members ran. An emergency call went out. Medical staff sprinted up with equipment, but the first pulse check told them what they already knew. Hours too late. They lifted the man out. Water streamed off his swim trunks. They covered him with a towel. A physician pronounced the time. Then the crew moved him through back corridors guests rarely notice, to a refrigerated compartment on a lower deck. Something the staff referred to quietly, without drama. Matteo told me the passenger's family was awakened in their cabin by senior crew and a doctor. Their grief echoed down the corridor, but most guests never heard it. Publicly, the ship kept running. Breakfast was served. Music played. Activities continued. The cruise line quietly arranged an emergency flight home for the family at the next port. Outside that small circle of crew and relatives, almost no one knew. When Matteo finished, the only sound was water hissing in the jets and deck chairs creaking gently in the swell. I realized my coffee had gone cold. For a moment, I pictured myself slipping under that same water, lungs filling, while other passengers laughed 2 feet away, never noticing. I thanked Matteo, though I wasn't sure why, and went to the buffet for a fresh cup. Under those bright stainless steel lights, everything felt too clean, too normal. I didn't sleep well. My cabin on deck 8 was midship, supposedly the steadiest part of the ship, yet the mattress seemed to rise and fall like it remembered what it floated on. Sometime after 3, I opened the balcony door. Night air smelled like salt and diesel. Moonlight traced a silver path across the dark gulf. Down on the pool deck, I saw 2 silhouettes in a hot tub, heads tipped back in almost identical poses. Both wore sunglasses even though it was pitch black. My heart tightened. My mind tried to turn them into the dead man from Matteo's story. Then one of them moved, splashing the other, and I exhaled shakily. Still, I closed the balcony door and told myself I was being irrational. Saturday in Cozumel, we docked beside other ships and tourists poured onto the pier in a bright, noisy migration. I joined a beach excursion, ate grilled fish under a thatched roof, forced myself to enjoy the sun. By sunset, we were sailing again toward the next island. Calm seas, soft music in the foyer. It should have felt perfect. That night, around 11, I stopped by the internet cafe to send a photo to my sister. On the way back, curiosity, or something like dread, pulled me toward the pool deck. The area was nearly empty. Most passengers were at a late show in the theater. The starboard hot tub glowed turquoise under underwater lights. Steam rose in thin wisps. A single man sat there alone, shoulders submerged, head tilted back, sunglasses reflecting nothing. He looked around my age, early 40s, with stubble and a long-sleeve rash guard. An empty cocktail glass rested on the rim near his hand. He didn't move. I stood by a deck chair, pretending to check my phone, watching. A minute passed, 2 minutes, longer. The unease twisted my stomach. I stepped closer and cleared my throat. "You all right, man?" No answer. I took another step. Chlorine-scented vapor curled into my face. The man's chest rose, barely, slow, shallow. He was breathing, but not the way someone relaxes, the way someone fades. My training kicked in before my fear could talk me out of it. I tapped his knee. "Hey, you okay? Do you need medical?" His head lolled slightly, mouth parting, but no words came. A wave rocked the ship. His shoulder slipped lower. I leaned over and braced him with both hands to keep him upright. His skin felt warm and clammy. His pulse at the neck was weak, fluttery. I hit the emergency button on the wall. No siren blared. Instead, a silent strobe flashed on a staff panel. Within a minute, 2 security officers hustled up, followed by a medic carrying an orange bag. They lifted the man under his arms, water pouring onto the deck. One officer asked if I'd seen him drinking. I told the truth. I'd only just arrived. They laid him flat, checked oxygen, started basic support. The medic's expression stayed calm, practiced, while the man's chest rose in stubborn, shallow breaths. They got him onto a stretcher and moved fast toward the elevator. Only then did I notice Matteo at the rail, mop in hand, watching. Our eyes met. He gave a small nod, not approval exactly, but recognition, like a teacher watching a student finally understand the lesson. The hot tub kept churning, empty now, foam circling like nothing had happened. The next morning, the cruise director cheerfully announced that a passenger had experienced a brief medical event and was resting comfortably in the infirmary. We were assured everything was on schedule. People applauded, then turned back to the omelette station. I thought about the man Matteo described, and how his family's world ended while the buffet kept serving roast and the band kept playing. That afternoon, I ran into Matteo near a crew stairwell. He told me the man from the hot tub had been heavily intoxicated and likely would have slipped under if nobody intervened. "He will go home with a story," Matteo said, voice flat. "But he will go home." We stood in silence while the ship vibrated beneath us. I asked how he carried the emotional weight of working in a place where vacations and disasters share the same square footage. He shrugged, like it was simple. "The ocean is big," he said. "All we can do is keep our eyes open." On the final morning, dawn broke pink as we angled back toward Florida. I sipped black coffee on my balcony and watched passengers tie luggage tags to suitcases. Somewhere below, corridors were already being cleaned, towels folded into perfect shapes, chairs arranged to look welcoming. Vacation brochures never show the narrow doors and quiet protocols. They never mention how thin the line is between carefree escape and something final. Standing there in the early light, I understood it clearly. On a ship, you can be surrounded by people and still be invisible. You can be safe and still be one small moment away from not being safe at all.